Hello and welcome to the Print Dashboard. The Road Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari recently launched the Bharat Car or Bharat NCAP, a crash testing regime for new cars launched in India. From 1 October 2023, cars sold in India can advertise their BNCAP scores. But what is BNCAP and why isn't it mandatory to start off? To know that and much more, we are joined by our automotive expert, Kushan Mitra. Welcome, Kushan. Welcome to the Print. Welcome to the Dashboard.
Thanks,
it's a big moment for safety, road safety, and for car makers in India. We have our own crash testing agency mechanism in this country.
It is a very big moment. We are the world's third largest car market, and for a long time we have been the only large car market without its own safety assessment scores. For the last few years, cars in India, some cars only, have been tested by the global NCAP, which is the global new car assessment program, which was done jointly by the FIA and the UN. And David Ward, who is the president of Global NCAP, came to India on the day of the launch. In fact, the Bharat NCAP program does use a lot from the Global NCAP. The testing regime is very, very similar, and it's a big day. It's something that we should celebrate, but as you said, it is not mandatory for cars right now.
Right. Why is that so? And it's also not voluntary.
No, it is voluntary.
It's voluntary.
Yeah. So right now car makers can volunteer their cars to go. I think the government hasn't given a timeline for this. I think they would want to make it mandatory for cars that are introduced from 2025, 26 onwards. This is there to give car makers some time to get, adhere to the norms.
Right.
But car makers have also realized that safety sells.
Right.
For the last few years, if you have noticed, even before the government made airbags mandatory, car makers started saying, okay, our car has 2 airbags, 4 airbags, and now 6 airbags.
Right.
They started talking about things like advanced driver assistance features, which are all safety related. So at least in the higher end of the market, safety is selling. And as the Indian market itself is evolving, in previous shows you talked about how SUVs dominate, right? It's not the cheap hatchback anymore. People are paying more for their cars,
right?
And one of the things they're paying more for is safety. So safety sells, so they know they'll probably volunteer cars. In fact, Gadkari ji said at the launch that already 30 cars have been volunteered, and given that in India we have about 70 odd models that are sold, that's almost half the car market that's already been volunteered.
Right. Kushan, besides the fact that you mentioned that it's a huge market, we are the third largest automotive market in the world, but we already, not us, there was already a global car assessment program that was a buyer's guide to, so to say, picking the safer of the available cars. So why is it that we needed one for in this country, and how is it different from the global NCAP?
Our testing regime is very similar to what the global NCAP uses. Now there are going to be 3 tests, we'll get to that in a bit, but one reason we needed one in our own country is because of the logistics involved. The global NCAP test took place in Germany. A car had to be acquired because a car is always taken as a random sample. It's not like Maruti will volunteer, say, the new Fronx,
right,
and say, okay, here, take one and test it. What happens is they volunteer, the car maker actually gives the Bharat NCAP or Global NCAP money to go acquire a car from a dealership. They don't know which dealership you will go to, because it has to be a random sample.
Right.
And then of course that car has to be transported. Now you have multiple tests because you have keep in mind the car is destroyed. You cannot use the same car used for frontal impact. There are 3 different tests a car will have to go through.
Okay.
Each of those destroys the car completely. You have your frontal offset because cars never hit full head on. So you have a frontal offset test at 64 kilometers per hour.
Right.
You have a side impact test, and you have a side impact pole test. The pole test is optional,
right,
but if you want a rating above 3 stars, you need to do the pole test. So you therefore have to find random samples. So all 3 cars that are used for these tests could come from different places. When these were sent abroad, you could have, it could cost 2.5 crore, I believe. That was what they were saying, and now it will cost less than half of that. So,
right. Kushan, it's usually boils down to the number of stars that on a scale of 1 to 5. That's one view for the buyer per se.
Yeah.
But do you think in BNCAP is there other ways that a buyer can actually look at how those ratings are achieved? Because essentially when the debate around safety, when it will democratize, people would start to look beyond those star ratings.
Well, you can look at much more other NCAP, particularly Euro NCAP. There are also ways of figuring out even adult occupant protection, which is the main score you got to look at for the front passenger and the driver. There are different ways of evaluating the crash. I mean, how much the steering column does it collapse, how much impact there is on your head if your head goes forward, all of those. And you can see that through injury patterns on, of course, the dummies in the crash test go through. There are those drawings that are available, but the star rating is usually easier. You can't, I mean, the AIS, this Automotive Industry Standard 197, which is being used for this test, it's fairly detailed. I mean, I have barely gone through it fully myself, and it's a very, very technical drawing. Not drawing, a very technical document. I mean, the amount your head deflects, the amount your spine deflects.
Right.
I mean, when you have a frontal impact, the amount your rib cage goes in. All of these matter.
Right.
And for the lay person, there may not be any real way of analyzing the data beyond a point.
Right, Kushan, but even though the first car is yet to be tested under the BNCAP regime, do you think that there will be some sort of a parity between the GNCAP ratings and of BNCAP when we put the same vehicle, same model under test? Or do you see
I think there will be complete parity. I know some people have said that the global NCAP was a much fairer test because it's done abroad. But first, you've got to have confidence in our own systems. I do not think India is going to be any less adept at doing these tests.
Right.
All cars that are made in India and sold abroad have to go through tests as well. Very often we saw cars that were sold abroad do better in tests than the global India-made cars for India.
Right.
But now that safety is starting to matter, I think car makers would want their cars to have 4 stars or 5 stars just to be sold.
Right. And how do we see automakers reacting to this? Because there are actually, I would not name them, but there are a few players in the market who seem to have been slacking on the safety front. But now it's like it's there, it's in the home.
See, firstly, it is not mandatory. So nobody has to go through the test. As I said, safety has become a marketing tool for them. So automakers will say, obviously, my car is safer than your car.
Right.
Eventually, like in Europe, every car eventually had to be 5-star rated. I may or may not disagree with some ratings, because even in India, to get a 3-star rating or above, your car needs to have electronic stability control, which is the electronic feature, is something I'll try and cover in a future column.
Right.
In Europe, the Euro NCAP test demands that to get 5 stars, you need to have ADAS. It's mandatory, otherwise you cannot get 5 stars. So are electronic aids necessary for a very high safety rating, or has it gone beyond just a pure structural test of a car? We just saw in that horrific accident on the Delhi-Mumbai expressway a few days ago how structural integrity of a car matters. I mean, that Rolls-Royce,
right,
people survived, even though the truck, 2 people did not. So structural integrity matters. Of course, I think the tests will evolve. But I do not for one second attack the fact that that the Indian test should be any less than the global NCAP test.
Right. It's also a matter. Do you think it's a matter of setting a stage for something like it sort of preempts automakers to like start on that path of safety?
Yeah. It does. It does. It does preempt car makers. They can't say we've adhered to all the norms. I'm sure they adhere to all the norms, and the norms were never very strict. But if you walk into a showroom, or you walk into nobody walks into just one showroom when they're buying a car. You go to different car brands. You go to showroom A and you see the car you walk into says 5-star safety, and the next showroom you go to and the car is not safety rated. And if you walk in with your wife and your family, you'll probably say, oh, well, I'll take the car that's safer.
Right.
Because it then says, you may not understand what the test does, but because the car maker is allowed to show 5 stars over there,
Right.
by this test, you'd buy it. Or you go towards that car, and of course, if cost is not a concern, you'd probably take the safer car.
Right. Well, then with that, we can say that India just got a little bit too serious about safety, and rightly so.
Yes, but we have to drive better, and the one problem with safety is the car can be very safe, but it is only as safe as you drive. So folks, please drive safely. Keep in mind something as simple as child occupant protection. You see the 5-star rating for that? That is only if the child or the infant is in a protected harness or a protected seat. So please, a car can only do so much.
Right.
It is your driving, keeping your children safe is important as well. So please drive safe.
Right. With that, we come to this episode of the Print Dashboard. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Kushan.
Thank you, Anurag.